everyone, it's noon. Thanks for joining me. I'm Griffin Gaffney. I'm the CEO of the San Francisco Standard. I'm joined by Kevin Trong, our business editor, and Kevin Wen, a business reporter on our team. Today, we're going to be talking about everyone's favorite topic in San Francisco, which is commercial real estate. And so I'll keep this pretty quick with our first question. Before I get to that, if you are joining us on Zoom and you have questions, just look at the bottom of your screen for the Q&A section. You can submit your questions in the Q&A. I have an iPad here where I will see those trickling in. If I don't answer it immediately, don't worry. I am taking note of it, and we'll come to your questions throughout the conversation. So, without further ado, I'll get straight to it and ask the question that's on everyone's mind about San Francisco commercial real estate, which is, are we at rock bottom? I'll start with you, Kevin.
So, I think there was, particularly in kind of the early days of the pandemic when things were very uncertain, there was concerns that this doom loop narrative and the doom loop itself in commercial real estate would essentially bring us down into this yawning abyss. And what I would say now is we've hit a floor, a cold hard concrete floor, but it is a floor. So what we're actually seeing is some transactions on the market, and real estate types like to call it price discovery. So we essentially know what commercial real estate is priced at. And the problem, particularly if you bought real estate a couple of years ago, is that price is down 60 to sometimes up to 80% off of those peak numbers. It's interesting, though, I was reporting on real estate back then as well, and everyone was really exuberant, everyone was really excited, everyone was kind of making a lot of money. But even at that point, they knew that the party would not last that much longer. Obviously, nobody knew that that COVID and the pandemic and remote work would happen. But what we're sort of seeing is a major sectoral shift. But we are sort of seeing things shake out and the picture become a little bit clear.
Let's turn it over to you. What do you think?
Well, as the Standards Real Estate Report, I just want to start off by saying I appreciate you by saying this is San Francisco's favorite topic. So shout out to all of you here joining us. Again, if you guys have questions, please pipe them in. I think it depends. You can go at it from the cold hard stats like Kevin Chung did, but I like to think of the bottom as it's like a feeling or
it's a vibes based.
Exactly. It's like so many things, right? And if and it depends on who you ask and when you ask them, right? So if I asked a residential developer in mid-market who was betting on tech's growth in that neighborhood, this week might feel like the bottom because X/Twitter just announced that it was going to shut down its offices, and they are obviously the poster child of tech's flight to that area. So maybe right now it feels like the bottom to you, even though you already did your price discovery 2-3 years ago. But I think like all else with stats, they come after the reality, which is I think if you were, say, a restaurant owner in the city, the bottom probably started 4 years ago, to be honest with you, and we're still trying to pick ourselves up from it now. So yeah, I just think it depends on who and when you ask them. But from a price discovery standpoint, absolutely. There's absolute clarity in the market now and an acceptance that this is granted, it's 2024 now. We are where we are.
Okay.
So.
Well, and then the important thing, people always talk about three most important things in real estate: is location, 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 and that matters obviously in buying a home, but also matters in buying an office building. We're sort of seeing a major split in some of the markets, like mid-market, that are really, really struggling, and then some places where things have settled out a little bit more strongly. And a lot of times people use this sort of overall number, like a vacancy rate. It doesn't really tell you the full story of walking around neighborhood to neighborhood, talking to the companies in each of those individual submarkets. And things can even really vary block by block, as anyone from San Francisco can tell you, even like with the weather.
I want to come back to determining the bottom and the trends that we're seeing and maybe opportunities for developers. But an interesting thing that you said that we didn't talk about in our prep that I want to go into a little bit is the sense that before the pandemic, there was a party and it may be over someday. Can you tell us more about that?
Right. So what we were seeing back then is essentially, and I guess I would also tie it to kind of the rise of tech, where there was more and more VC investment happening. There was larger and larger leases happening. You had these companies leasing 100,000, 200,000 square feet, not even because they had enough employees to fill them, but with the expectation of future growth. And you had vacancy rates at numbers like, sub 4%, sub 3%. So it was essentially a completely full market. Made it really impossible for companies that didn't have the resources of some of the big tech companies to grow and to mature. And a lot of those companies actually ended up leaving, maybe to Oakland or some of these other spillover markets. Now, if you talk to the brokers or you talk to the people who work in commercial real estate, who get paid off commissions and get paid off rent fees, they are super happy about that. But as anybody who's worked in the industry for a long enough time knows, like, this is an industry of pretty high highs and then steep crashes. Now, this is a steeper crash than we've seen in a long time, if ever. But, it's kind of interesting. San Francisco is somewhat this poster child now for this hollowing out of commercial real estate. But during 2018 times, it was the hottest market in the world. So maybe there's a happy medium that we can kind of work out.
Mm-hmm. So back to the bottom and hitting it. What, if any, activity are you seeing? What are conversations you're hearing about agents, brokers feeling the bottom? Are we starting to see more activity? What's the temperature check on that?
Yeah, I could take that one. Look, it's a buyer or shopper's market right now. If you want nice office space in San Francisco, it's available, and primarily because the biggest tech companies that came in and fueled that rise that Kevin was talking about, and fueled, quite frankly, a lot of construction. We forget the city's skyline was remade during that decade as well. The whole east side, which used to be called Rincon Hill or the Greyhound Station, East, is now a whole brand neighborhood. You have Mission Bay.
We love a little marketing campaign.
Yeah. So, look, I mean, to answer your question, that's the activity. We're 4 years from the pandemic now. Those who want to come back and have the means to come back, because not everyone does. Money is expensive right now. Not the same startups are getting funded anymore.
Yeah.
Those that want to come back have the chance to do so, and there's a lot of great space in Mission Bay, even mid-market, which I have written as like a traditional office dead zone. There's just a lot of like starter activity happening. Kind of people will harken it back to like the 90s when people were emerging out of that downturn, working out of the garages and coming up with like cool stuff, right?
The garage to office pipeline.
Yeah. So look, it's obviously nowhere near 2019, which is everyone like thinks of as like the nadir, is like the peak pre-pandemic time. But I mean, look, there's people who want to move are now moving in at a discount. Some building owners, like, that stuff just needs to churn through. Some people are sitting on bad debt. Some people are mortgage free, like we were talking about before the chat today. They're in position to make moves. So these things just take a long time. It's unsexy, but they just take a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the problem is that when a lot of these buildings were purchased at the peak of the market, debt was super, super cheap. Interest rates were basically near zero for a number of years. And now, as interest rates have risen, the cost of that debt has continued to increase. It's sort of left people in kind of a handcuff situation, with no really recourse out of it other than to give up the buildings. So what a lot of the transactions you're seeing right now are property owners, some of them who are in pretty good financial position, but it doesn't really make sense for them to continue owning these buildings anymore, getting it off their books. And now you have opportunistic buyers coming in from, there was a deal a couple of weeks ago, all the way from Alaska to buy their first San Francisco building, because they sort of smell that this is an opportunity. They want to put and particularly if you are a high net worth individual, if you're a family office, if you have money free and clear, you don't need to borrow money. This is the chance or the bet that a lot of folks are taking, that based on the history, based off of the trends we've seen in the past, there's only one way to go, and that is up, maybe not as high as it used to be. So they're parking their money in now, and picking up these properties often at 80% haircuts is from just a couple of years back.
What do you make of that bet?
Well, part of the bet is that interest rates will eventually get cut again. And so sometimes it's just sort of like playing almost like the stock market or arbitrage play, where what you're buying is free and clear, you own it all outright. But you're essentially making the bet that, oh, well, I can refinance, I can get my money out, I can actually just essentially when interest rates fall, it kind of increases the value of the building because well, it's kind of complicated property math, but it essentially does because the cost it takes to run and operate the mortgage is lower. So they might just be playing it like that, like, oh, in a couple of years I'll be able to get off of this building and just make a nice hefty profit. And there's some other people who are thinking about it more in the long term. There's Cyrus Samaji who's out in Presidio Bay Ventures, who purchased a building that was empty, and now he's essentially trying to class it up, make it.
This one Spear?
It was previously 60 Spear, now it's 88 Spear.
On Spear.
I think Kevin wrote about it as an office resort he's trying to create. So there are other people trying different strategies. I think it's left to be seen which strategy may work out. But I think people are going to be making a lot of money. I mean, people that are in a position to make money often make their bets in the downturn, and they pull their money out when things are on the rise. So.
I also think it's important to clarify that we're talking a lot about office space right now.
Yeah.
But that this math, like just broadly speaking, is playing out in every sector of real estate, multifamily housing, retail, and most of it like downtown, right? Everyone's probably heard the expression that San Francisco's neighborhoods are all fine. It's just this one neighborhood.
I'm familiar with it, but maybe you should. What do you mean by that?
They're like, the neighborhoods are thriving, right? Obviously each one, if we zoom in, will have some, issues and nuisances.
How do we know they're thriving?
Well, there's like, there are residents there. We know that, there hasn't been we don't have this flight of like people that people think of when they see certain headlines. Like, the population is still strong here. Like housing costs the price of homes is still high. They're still trading. So like people are still in San Francisco.
In these neighborhoods, especially.
Exactly. Yeah. It just, can we get them to come downtown? Which is a huge talking point in this, upcoming election. The mayor has her whole 30 by 30 plan, right? All that's predicated on, okay, if not office workers, okay, what do we do to get critical mass back into our skyline?
What is 30 by 30?
30,000 residents by, is it just residents? Yeah, by 2030. Is it only residents or is it also a combination of
I
other
think
stuff?
it's people living there, yeah.
Anyone from the mayor's office, get at us. Yeah, let us know.
Come into the Q&A, please. And that's a good segue into another topic that we wanted to bring forward today, which is city and other efforts to, quote, revitalize downtown, to make it more attractive. There's this First Thursdays effort, which is basically a street party, which
It was lit.
Judging by your experience, which was lit, my Instagram stories, it seems to be working. Does that translate into actual activity? Is that just a hopeful thing that maybe will someday make it more attractive to people, for people to move there, or new office leases to be signed? What do you make of that?
Well, I think there's definitely a psychological benefit of just having people out there and, having a big disco ball, having people dance. A lot of what I've been trying to think about when it comes to remaking downtown as a destination past office work is having to retrain a population that goes out in their local community and oftentimes feels like, a lot of San Franciscans go, I don't want to go downtown. Why would I go there? So having a reason to go there, having anchor events is a good thing. But that's only one piece of that larger puzzle. Eventually you need to have reasons to go there, past just like, a once monthly event. And that means small businesses. Maybe that means bringing more residents actually in there. Maybe that means like neighborhood serving retail, like the Whole Foods we lost a couple of years back in mid-market. Now, this is only a piece of the puzzle. It's kind of like, it's not a positive statement to say, but it's true that the city only has a certain amount of control over this. A lot of it's like sort of global financial markets. A lot of it's Jerome Powell and his decision to either cut interest rates or keep them the same. But I think it's interesting because there is a sort of concerted city effort to try to get folks to downtown, to think about it as a party or nightlife and entertainment and cultural destination. And if you talk to the people at First Thursdays, they had a good time. And maybe like they're like, oh, well, maybe I could go out here. But that in and of itself, I don't think is enough to sort of sustain the kind of regular foot traffic necessary to kind of truly revive the neighborhood. But it's a good start.
Yeah, but you do what you can, right? Because we're now in 2024. What else are you going to do? You know, if not, are we just going to sit in our hands and gawk at empty office buildings?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think these little things, the hope, and I think people in the OEWD would tell you this. The hope is that these little ripples cause something bigger, right? They change perception. That if you were, with Kevin and I on the dance floor and that little gallery turned into a club,
Were you actually?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
I had my backpack on. I was one of those guys. I was like,
True office worker. You know what I mean?
Half the crowd had backpacks on. It's like 2019. But yeah, I mean, it's those things that add up, right? It's like, okay, we know more people are coming into the office if they have an office in SF 2 to 3 days a week now. Can we make it fun? Can we get them to stay? Can we get them to consider, hey, why don't you just live down here? Again, because that's the math people are making.
And I think part of it is also like we were talking about, some of this real estate cycle needs to actually cycle. Things need to sort of go through the process. Things need to get cheaper. You talk to a lot of the small businesses out in downtown, areas of downtown. Sure, they complain about the foot traffic, but it's like the lower foot traffic with the incredibly high rents and the incredibly high cost of doing business. So the landlords need to sort of like right size in their expectations of what a small business can actually pay for in that environment. So just kind of things need to be a little bit cheaper, a little bit easier, a little bit, pre-boom, and maybe a little bit, maybe embrace a little bit of that grittier, more inexpensive side that we haven't seen downtown in a long time.
Yeah, like when I moved to SF and shared a 1 bed with 3 people. We love that energy. Okay, so just a little plug for the Q&A. If you're with us on Zoom, go to the bottom of your Zoom, click the Q&A button, send us those questions, some stuff that's rolling in. Chris Wright from Advanced SF is helping us on 30 by 30. It is residents and students.
There you go.
Okay.
That was,
Students.
I believe, a big part of the
Shout out.
plan was, the downtown campus energy, which do you two know? Is there an update on that?
So actually the UC said we're not currently planning.
It's gonna be a no for me.
Yeah, it's gonna be a no for me, dog. But what the mayor's doing is trying to create the summer program with some HCBUs. So there is a little bit of a lag there. I mean, part of it is like a lot of public agencies right now are locked in this sort of bad fiscal situation where they got a lot of aid, COVID aid during the pandemic, and now that stuff is starting to run out. We're sort of seeing it in BART. We're seeing it obviously in our local city budget, and UC is also seeing that as well. Now it's a question, maybe like we'll get some sort of federal aid or some sort of help to help revive, or maybe from the state level to revive some of these downtowns. But at least for it looks like that plan for a large campus is on pause, at least for now.
Yeah.
And I always like to remind people there is a college downtown. It's UC Law, and it's right there. And
True.
yeah,
Very true. Maybe the law students aren't holding it down quite as.
you'll be surprised.
busy studying.
Walk around the Tenderloin, those
Yeah.
restaurants. They're there. It's they're low key there. Yeah.
Yeah. One question that's actually really interesting to me because I don't know how I would respond to this. For anyone who's wondering, we at the Standard come in almost every day, so we don't have this issue. However, there is a lot of discussion of, and this question is from Nick, who is a small business owner in the South Park area, where Nick reports there is no foot traffic at all.
Yeah.
Maybe we want to define that. However, what do we make of sort of a city mandated, or even there's some discussion of tax breaks for companies that force or mandate workers to come back into the office? Do we think that's actually going to work? How does it actually, I mean, you had a scoop on Salesforce doing this later in the year. What do we think is actually going to happen?
I think people who own real estate are very supportive of that idea. And I think, so, in terms of like fees and tax cuts, these last couple of years, the city has had to kind of rethink its position on a lot of those issues. So whether that be like office to residential conversions, transferring of properties, like they're thinking about that.
Yeah.
The mayor's office or the board of supervisors will have to tell us if that's something they're open to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think all options are on the table to keep the wheel greased and keep this moving. But yeah, I mean, look, the biggest employer in town has now reversed its fully remote policy, which is an indicator.
The biggest employer next to the city.
Right, the biggest private employer. Sorry.
Which I'm not trying to clarify, but
Well, that I mean, yeah,
even the city had
yeah,
a hard
the
time
city, yeah.
deciding whether it was gonna,
Well, yeah,
how it was gonna do that, and
well, I mean, it's so the city hasn't brought all of its workers
Right.
back in full
Come
time.
in the room, though. Yeah.
And that has become like a major issue in the labor negotiation. So we're sort of seeing this kind of negotiation happen between, I don't know if it's a negotiation, if it's a fight, if it's some sort of conflict between the workforce and the management or the leadership of the company. I mean, mandates, tax breaks, all of this stuff can help to change the incentive a little bit. Ultimately, an individual company is going to make the decision for themselves, just like an individual worker is going to be like, I will work here or I will not work here. All those things I think can help sort of push and change the calculus for individuals. And that plays a role in it too. But I think we also have to sort of realize that 5 days a week is never gonna. It's just gone.
Yeah.
It's gone. And particularly in somewhere like San Francisco, which has been sort of the leading edge of this, we're kind of ahead of the curve in some weird ways. And in other markets, I think more people are back, but because we made it so easy to go remote, and we kind of it also has something to do with the ways that we shut down and how long we were shut down and things. But all that stuff is related. But what we're seeing is actually some of the activity happening in the startup world, among some of these AI companies. They're starting to come in a little bit more. They are in person because they're smaller teams or they're early stage.
you go to Tartine Manufacturing on Alabama Street midday. It's like
That's the
Y
spot.
Combinator
That's the
is
spot.
OpenAI, like they're all there.
Yeah.
You can't get that croissant. It's
Yeah.
gone. Like, so it does seem to be the case that some companies do actually want to be in person. I guess it's editorializing a little bit, but to me, if what we're saying here is that the return to downtown is highly vibes based, it kind of kills the vibe if it's like, you must come. Which I suppose is why we were seeing the first Thursday. Can we create a fun vibe that is a draw, like a carrot rather than a stick?
Employers are thinking about it the same way. How do we attract our office workers back in? A lot of them, will tell you they want their employees in more, but they're doing these surveys and they're getting the feedback that their workers still, prefer a hybrid schedule. Employers are thinking about this too, and that's affecting how stuff like the office building you mentioned earlier with Cyrus. Okay, how do we zhuzh it up?
Yeah.
And Tuesdays and Thursdays have been traditionally when people have been coming back more. I just saw some recent data that Mondays are becoming a little bit more popular, Wednesdays as well. So I just think we won't ever get to that full level of in office work and employment again. So what are the ways we can kind of bolster that baseline that we're eventually going to be able to get to with some of these surrounding services, amenities, and other activations?
We touched on this a little bit in this conversation of getting people back, and an audience question from Sarang, a PhD candidate at UC Berkeley. Nice job, good luck on that endeavor. Is there anything the city can do policy-wise? I'm going to read between the lines and think that maybe that means taxes or other benefits to make this happen.
Yeah.
What's being discussed? How is it going? What do you think?
Taxes to bring people back.
Any incentives
to move this along.
Yeah.
Yeah. This happens in every cycle, but transfer tax. Everyone's wondering about that.
Okay,
What can
define it and then tell us how it impacts.
Yeah, every real estate transaction you make in the city, you have to pay a tax, a cut of it. And the thinking is, if we want these ownership changes to cycle through faster, because new owners, whether that be in the hotel industry, the office sector, they're the ones that can afford to offer lower rents. They're the ones who can afford to upgrade their properties. They're the ones that are motivated to do this, not the people who have to pay their lender back, a 2019 debt. So to move that along, can we make it whether that be, red tape, whether that be the transfer tax, there's a huge debate around that. And there's always a lobbying effort every election cycle, in the development community to waive those, not waive them, but you start to create little carve outs, Mayor Ed Lee famously did this in mid-market, right? Yeah. How do I get this new activity I want into this area? Tax break.
Yeah, and then in the upcoming election, there's a big business tax reform measure that's going to be on the ballot. And one of the things it does is it sort of cuts local business taxes on most businesses under $5 million in revenue, so a lot of small businesses. Kind of sort of rejiggers a lot of the formulation for some of the medium and large size companies. But, if you look at some of the analysis of our local business tax structure, a company in San Francisco pays a lot more for being in San Francisco, like a kind of a larger company, than if they relocated to other parts of even the Bay Area.
Such as San Jose.
Such as a San Jose. So I mean, anything to kind of change that calculus. I've talked to folks even within the city about this, that San Francisco for a long time hasn't had to try very hard. And now, because of remote work, because we have a little bit more of a mobile workforce, because other cities around the globe have been able to up maybe their venture capital investment ecosystems, maybe their educational systems. We are having to try a little bit harder. Now we still have the Golden Gate Bridge, we still have beautiful views, we still have the better weather than pretty much anywhere else in the country, but we have to start thinking, I think, a little bit outside the box.
You say you smiling on the weather point. It's like
just
debatable. Don't ask my husband.
Just to play devil's advocate on that, because we are kind of leaning like really hard into the tax code camp right here. But just to play defense a little bit. Look, there is a premium to be in San Francisco, even in down times, right? And people would argue, especially people who will say that look, voters also want a lot of services. They also want a robustly funded, police department. They want, things that make the city great cost money too. And it just costs more to work here, to live here, all the above, to do business here. So
I think that sort of like ties into just how everything is more expensive here, which also ties to the cost of housing, where it's like, you talk to a lot of these small businesses where it's like, can't even find workers to work here because nobody can afford to live here. So it's a lot of like, I mean, a lot of it goes back to how expensive it is to do business, but also to live, to work, to play, to do all these things here. And we kind of need to hopefully get into a situation where some of those costs get lowered and people are a little bit more free to try new things.
Yeah. Speaking of trying new things, an audience question I think you, Kevin Trong, did a lot of reporting on, but I think both of you have touched on it, is conversions, office to residential conversions. I think I'll rip the headline out, which is doesn't really pencil out. Is that the case? What do you think of that?
Well, so we've been talking about this, I think since the pandemic happened. So that's 4 years. There is essentially no conversion project in the works right now. I mean, there's some in various stages of planning, but there's nothing under construction.
They're not the ones you think of. People imagine like office buildings.
Yeah, office to residential.
It's
a bunch of college students in the Salesforce Tower.
Right.
It's not
that's
that.
where the imagination goes.
Yes.
It's hardly ever that. Yeah. It's just too expensive to do right now.
Because
the same. I mean, I would give the same answer as to compared to developing anything new. I mean, it's actually, people would tell you it's more expensive to convert an office building that's in good shape. Say if you got like a nice office, it's actually more expensive to convert that to build something from the ground up. I mean, because it's just the floor plates. I don't want to get too inside baseball.
You need a toilet over here.
Right. The amount of windows come in, like the walls that didn't exist before need to come in. It's a huge beast. And there's a reason why it's stuff like, it's actually more practical to do an old abandoned hospital or a hotel, right? Because those things have already leaned more residential. So it's not worth it economically right now to pursue. And there, City Hall's tried to add some things to grease the wheel a little bit, but we'll see.
And when the financial environment changes, like the idea from folks like the legislation that Supervisor Peskin and Mayor Breed put forward is that putting kind of like laws on the books that would make it easier. I mean, you look at other cities like Boston, LA, DC have been actually pretty good in some of these conversion rates, but everything is so expensive here, like to construct basically anything, even at the top of the market. Now you're looking at things at the bottom of the market. It's hard to get things rolling. We kind of need a shift in terms of like some of the macroeconomic stuff too, the cost of financing construction and things like that.
Just for 2 seconds, I think we do have a lot of power users on this call, judging by the questions. But I want to go into what we've talked about a few times now, which is the cost of construction and building and all of that in San Francisco, just to define it for those who, like myself, prior to this job, didn't really understand. Why is it so much more expensive here? What are some of the main drivers of those costs?
Labor is a huge portion of that. I mean, we have incredibly strong unions that have very good contracts, and some of the requirements around union labor on construction projects raises the cost, but it's also the cost of material. Everything is like more expensive. The cost of lumber has gone up. If you talk to people, the cost of Kevin did a story on house paint. House paint is kind of gone crazy.
Mhm.
So everything is more expensive. But if you're talking about the very baseline level floor here, it's like it's more expensive to do anything here because housing costs are higher. Everything costs a little bit more.
Mhm.
And that all feeds into the cost of construction. And then you're also extending, we have a very elongated planning and entitlement process.
Mhm.
And so that stuff adds up.
Time costs money.
Yeah.
Time costs money.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then the third piece of that three-legged stool, as you will, right, is just the cost of borrowing money. Like
Mhm.
the lending landscape has shifted drastically, especially the regional bank collapses last year. People forget,
Yes. And I try to forget.
Exactly. Yeah.
We loved you, First Republic.
yeah. And just that is really uncertain too. So I always kind of work backwards, right? So I'm thinking about, okay, what is breaking ground in the city right now versus what's not. So like last week I wrote about that affordable housing site that's breaking ground in the Mission. The reason they were able to do that is because they reordered kind of the order of operations in which their money came in. Traditionally, you would wait for government tax credits to come in, or you would go to the lender first, like, hey, Mr. Lender, I have like an apartment building I want to build. Like, will you loan me, $100 million to get this done? Maybe 10 years ago that would have worked, but right now that's a really tough conversation. So what they did was they front loaded a lot of private money first to get that certainty for the developers and the architects to start working, right?
Mhm.
Because unless all those parties have certainty that they're going to make money or this effort's going to be worthwhile, they're just not going to do that work.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah,
that's the huge part too, is the cost of money right now and that borrowing conversation. Like, who the hell wants to do it?
yeah,
Yeah.
right. It's tough.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to steer us to a different part of the city that is a total bright. Readers love it. Like every time we publish a story about Stonestown, it pops off.
Right.
And my
Oh,
hot
I
take
see what you
is
did there, yeah.
Stonestown is popping off in part because it's not really, it kind of feels like you're not in San Francisco in that it is more residential. It feels a little more suburban. And throughout the pandemic, we saw this like exodus to the suburbs and a lot of development in the suburbs, et cetera. So what, if anything, can we learn from, well, two questions. Number one, is Stonestown a success? And number two, what, if anything, can we learn about it for the rest of the city?
Well,
yes, they're a success.
Yes.
I mean, they're leased,
I mean, the
they're
Shake
leased up,
Shack.
they're leased up and they're busy.
Yeah.
They're a success. Yes.
Yeah. Once you get in that reclining seat at the movie theater there, you're like,
you get it.
it's working.
There are two things I think interesting happening at Stonestown. I think number one, the first piece to it is that they have, again, I'm going to use a retail buzzword here. They have the critical mass, right?
Mm.
The malls here in downtown were reliant on the traffic we used to get. You don't need office workers at Stonestown, right?
Yeah.
You have the San Francisco States right there. You have families. You have people coming
A
through
giant
there.
parking lot.
Yeah, exactly. Grocery store, movie theater, you name it. A lot of, it's a destination, a lot of places to eat. And then the second part is that they were really smart with their leasing strategy. They skated to where the puck was going, right?
Yeah.
20 years ago, it was really taboo to be like, ooh, I'm gonna, racially change my mall, the makeup of the businesses in there. Now they're like leaning into it. They're like, oh, these brands in Asia are really popular, not just with Asians, but like, everyone who have traveled the world, who have now, the internet's made the world smaller for them to become weebs or, just love, I don't know, Chinese mala cuisine. Like, all that stuff's becoming mainstream now. So all of that, I think, is cooking at Stonestown. Whereas down here, legacy brands, office work, gosh,
Right.
both of those are going down now.
Right.
Yeah, and then now obviously they just got approved for a major kind of redevelopment that keeps a lot of what people like about Stonestown, but adds some housing, adds some other elements. And I think what they're essentially trying to do is sort of create this next phase of their development. And you mentioned it as a kind of a suburban campus, and they're trying to make it a little bit more of an urban suburban campus by actually building up. And not eliminating the parking, although people were kind of like mad about that. But that will happen over the course of many years. And they went through the planning process and stuff, but it's going to, like we were talking about in terms of the cost of construction, it's going to take time to get enough financing to actually start that process going. But they're sort of thinking about, how do we build a campus, retail, now residential campus that can actually sort of stand the test of time and kind of evolve with the city itself, which is presumably going to go up with some of the housing requirements that the state is putting on San Francisco.
On that point of what's to come for Stonestown, one thing that I've observed frequently in San Francisco is some entity, be it the mayor's office, a developer, whoever, throws up these like delicious looking renderings on Instagram.
We love rendering.
Yeah. And then the fast follow question for me is always, okay, like when's that going to happen?
Yeah, right.
Because I feel the construction costs, the planning and the permitting, is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Is it 20 years? And sometimes it becomes, yeah, it'll happen in 10 years, and then you forgot, and then it never happens.
Right.
So, and we're sort of baited by the sexy renderings, and then we never get it.
Yeah.
What do we make of that for Stonestown specifically, and then how that may be playing out in other parts of the city, as we're talking so much about creating these vibrant centers and things that look cool and you want to go there? Is it actually going to happen?
Yeah, the Bay Area is filled with renderings that never came to life.
Yeah, a graveyard of renderings.
Yeah, there's always going to be stuff that's entitled, which means it's been approved by like city or county planners that never break ground for. Yeah, and that can happen for a bunch of reasons, right? I will say, I mean, in terms of like Stonestown, that redevelopment being the biggest development in I think 50 years for that community, it's got a lot of good factors going for it, right? So we can't guarantee tomorrow that Brookfield, which by the way gave up the downtown mall as well, we can't guarantee that they have, or we don't know that they have the funds or the financing lined up to break ground tomorrow. But we can say that, okay, there's a critical mass of residents here. There's a successful mall. There's a growing college. Like it's a lot of stuff going for it that would trend towards a yes, which is a shovel into the ground. So yeah.
Well, yeah, I think you mentioned this sort of a couple of healthcare facilities in Laurel Heights, which is part of the city that rarely gets any development on the city's west side, that are turning into, or that are slated to be turned into housing. Now that's kind of been in limbo for a few years. What the city has done is sort of created this special tax district that allows them to essentially borrow off the revenue that would be created if they're able to actually get this little neighborhood going. So there are like things like that the city can do to sort of change the economic calculus. But ultimately, these are private entities that may or may not have the money to do so. I mean, one good thing in Stonestown's favor is like it's popular, and it seems to be sort of like remaining or even getting more popular. There's more stores opening, so that is at least good cash flow to help make that equation balance a little bit easier.
I'm going to try and morph two audience questions. One is about doing it live, as it were, about how the city is adjusting to new California development rules, which I'm going to interpret as no rules because we didn't meet our goals. And then there's another question about like sort of endless regulations, and it's very challenging to build new stuff. How are we seeing those two things come together now? Has a floodgate been opened?
Yeah.
What's happening?
Well, it's funny because I don't think in very many cities would you actually, like Maryland Reed did, praise getting control taken away from you. But I think it's a little bit like people this is my own personal criticism, but people in San Francisco sometimes like to abdicate responsibility for some of the stuff. And luckily, or for them, the state has sort of created a mechanism to do so. What a lot of folks are talking about is sort of this streamlined entitlement and planning review. Things getting approved if they are within planning code or within zoning, just sort of kind of pushed through and entitled.
Is that actually happening though?
I mean, to a certain extent, things are moving faster. I mean,
For housing.
for housing, yes. And some of these individual laws are now going into effect. You write about SB 423 the other day?
Yeah, like the people who broke ground in the Mission District, they credit, Scott Wiener's 2 Senate bills that,
Tell us more about those bills.
more or less, I mean, again, without going into the weeds, more or less, if your city is not compliant with its,
the state
its
said
quota,
every city has a quota.
they've handed down targets for everyone.
Yeah,
if
we
you're-
didn't hit ours.
Right. If you're not
Classic
compliant with
San
that,
Francisco.
then you lose some control, and that's
Yeah.
what's happened.
Okay.
Yeah, but then that only gets you to kind of like the approval stage. I mean, and then you're kind of like, we have a really nice rendering. We have like a nice vision for what could be.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, how do we actually get these things constructed? It's the exact same sort of like point we were making from before, which is difficult.
So remains to be seen, kind of.
Well, I mean, we're seeing things move a little bit faster, and I think there is a growing political consensus that we need to like build stuff in order to house people, because there's a lot of like intervening issues or kind of like intersecting issues that come from the housing crisis. So that is one positive. I mean, I was having this conversation with somebody, and we were talking about the birth of the YIMBY movement, and I remember when Sonia Trust basically started like in 2015, 2016. And she was an incredibly controversial person. And then now there's like a kind of like a natural constituency that exists, which, I mean, a lot that has changed really, really rapidly in the last decade. So, I mean, there's kind of a growing consensus that things need to change. Things need to be streamlined. So, I mean, that's at least forward momentum on that front.
Well, and these state laws are in part a manifestation of the change in the political tenor around construction and YIMBYism. Yes, in my backyard.
Yeah.
There are a few questions in here, which is a good follow-up on that, though, around what are the considerations around affordable housing? Build more, does it become cheaper? What's the role of a nonprofit developer and affordable housing rules in San Francisco? How does that play into this conversation?
So just to like, again, kind of dumb everything down, like if the three of us wanted to build an affordable housing building, like it just wouldn't pencil out as is, right? Like we couldn't go to the bank and be like, hey, I want to build a building and charge less rent. Like that's just not going to work, right? So because of that, like affordable housing development is handled by, a huge component of it comes with, government subsidies, and it's, developed a lot by, specialists, people who want to do this, hence the nonprofits that the person brought up. That's what you have to consider with affordable housing development. I think the consensus is we need all of the above. We need affordable middle income housing, maybe less mansions. But yeah, the consensus is we need more of it. And that's the math that's always at play. It's like, okay, if the private markets aren't going to fund this, how do we fund it then? So that's why this November, there's a huge Bay Area bond that's going to be on the your ballots, where they're essentially asking for a huge, multi-billion-dollar, again, bonds are complicated. It doesn't work like a straight up loan, but they're essentially asking, hey, taxpayers, let's go out and get this money and fund it ourselves, because right now the banks aren't going to do it, So in November, you'll see stuff like that come up. And, this is not the first time. Affordable housing needs these kind of injections of public cash every 5-6 years is the way experts have explained it to me. But yeah, that's how you make the math work. And then we need to make the construction itself cheaper as well. That started a whole political kerfuffle here with the unions in town 2 years ago. But yeah.
Got it.
Well, and then the state level, there's also movement. You wrote about Alex Lee, who's a member of the state legislature, who's essentially trying to create a state public housing agency. And I like to bring this up as a little bit of history, but it wasn't so long ago that public housing had a broad bipartisan political consensus at the federal level. And then obviously things changed. Things were kind of voucherized over the course of the last few decades. And, there were issues obviously with the ways that some of the public housing developments were operated and run. But it wasn't so long ago that we kind of believed as a country, both sides of the aisle, that we should fund places for people that can't afford to live. Right now, we're kind of in a little bit more of a fragmented system. So individual cities, individual developers, individual states, in the case of Alex Lee, are having to try to figure it out. But I think like some sort of larger federal effort probably would really help. It's yet to be seen whether anything can get past Congress, but yeah.
I think is Tim Walz labeled a YIMBY VP? Is he like the first YIMBY VP? I've seen that thing piece. I've seen it floating around.
Here's it is a more specific question. So if we don't have knowledge on it, totally fine. I am also curious, what is going on at Van Ness and Market? The question from Robert is, do you have an update on Haze Point multi-billion-dollar mixed-use development at Van Ness and Market? Is Lend-Lease still seeking capital or a development partner? What's going on over there?
I think I heard a rumor they're trying to sell the site actually.
Oh,
yeah. So yeah, this was kind of like the one thing that was happening in that area of the city, particularly like a couple of years ago. They ran out of capital. So they were trying to find some new person or new entity or new partner to help fill in the gap. I don't know if they've been very successful in that front. Yeah, so I think that's kind of a fallow site. There's right across the street, there's One Oak, which it's also kind of a fallow site that is entitled for a large high rise. I think I want to say housing high rise. And so we're kind of in this sort of holding pattern right now. I mean, I don't really foresee construction restarting on that unless economic conditions change. And maybe that includes like having a new developer come in like more fresh.
Yeah, this seems like again, I don't have full knowledge of the situation, but this does seem like a developer question in that we know that Lend-Lease is, an Australian multinational developer, really hot in the late 2010s. Google picked them to develop, their supposed South Bay mega campus that again hasn't broken ground.
Yeah.
So we just know, again, just following the headlines, knowing on background that they're going through their own kind of existential moment here in the U.S. too.
Yeah.
So
right. There's
I would look, Mr. Reader, I would look into Lend-Lease. So.
Yeah. All right. Let's see.
I would float a question to the audience.
Yes, go for it.
What would you guys do with the downtown center mall if I made you San Francisco czar for a year?
Yeah.
Put those in the chat.
Put in your chat, what would you do with downtown San Francisco or downtown center mall? I'll interpret this as maybe one answer to that. There is someone in here who said, what about just destroying the buildings and making parks?
Oh.
I mean,
I heard the coyote lobby is happy about that.
That would be amazing. The problem with some of that stuff is like, okay, the city relies on this tax base.
Yeah.
Property taxes are the number one individual source of tax revenue for the city. So although I would love to have more parks, that's just basically taking a loss. Yeah. And then also it's really expensive to
bring the demolition crew in,
to destroy property and then build a park. You know what I mean?
And you'd have, Mr. Reader, you'd have to get all of the. I know we're only doing half-baked ideas, so sorry. I'm going to dump in on this, but you would have to get all the owners to agree to do that
of the building.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah. So far, no wild ideas for the mall.
Well, I've been pitching this to the development community for the last 6 months I've been here. I say, look. It's time to bring a casino to the downtown mall.
Certainly would be popular.
Checks a lot of boxes: entertainment, experience, revenue. Let's make it happen, guys.
Well, we got one from Peter, mega sports complex. There was that like brief moment where it was going to be a soccer stadium or something.
Yeah.
That was another one of those.
That was a rendering.
We love a rendering. Yeah.
There is, I did tour, there is on the 4th floor of the downtown center mall where the nonprofits have started leasing out. There's a huge rock climbing wall there. So good.
As we know, rock climbing is the gateway to soccer.
Fencing under the rotunda? I don't know, man. Yeah, this reader's onto something.
Larry says, and I think this was in our reporting, but I saw elsewhere as well that SFUSD owns the land. Is that right?
Yeah, so they own the land underneath it.
Got it.
And I think it's kind of a ground lease sort of situation, but they don't own the building. So the building is that's also a very complicated sort of situation to untangle. If we wanted to kind of, I don't know. I ask like weekly. I ask people what should be done at the mall. I get a lot of shrugs. I get some pickleball. I get some concert venue, but I don't really know.
I got international food, Italy type of center.
Italy would be
Yeah.
great.
I mean, we've talked about this, but when you go to, gosh, it's escaping me. What's the mall in San Jose?
Valley Fair.
Valley Fair.
Mhm.
I mean, there are many people there who are there just to eat. Din Tai Fung, the new Korean barbecue place, like it is so incredibly busy. So, Tom, food may be a thing, and if you're listening to Din Tai Fung, go to the mall. Like, open in that mall.
Din Tai Fung, we know you listen.
Yeah.
Love you. Thank you.
Art Academy, not bad. Yeah, maybe one here is a startup incubator.
Startup incubator, that actually would be good. Yeah, there's a little bit of a nonprofit incubator happening.
Yeah. And a related question, I guess, it's commercial-ish real estate. And maybe this starts to get out of our expertise as the business team, but what will happen to SFUSD's closed schools? Could that be an area of opportunity, or they'll probably just get mothballed?
I think, well, that's an interesting story for us to do. I think
we want JD for the tip.
Yeah.
Studiously writing that down.
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen when SFUSD has like closed things is like they kind of become these vacant. Our colleague Garrett writes about quite a few of these. They become these vacant properties that fortunately become a magnet for like vandalism and stuff. So hopefully that doesn't happen. So we'll figure it out.
Yes.
Maybe they could help their revenue situation by selling it off to help create some other opportunities for folks. Maybe
that's a good plug. If you have a vacant building that you need investigated, readers love that when Garrett goes after that. So let us know and we will find out. That is part of the job.
Yeah.
Let's see, not many other crazy ideas coming in. What about the school, like turning it into one of these is making an art academy, like turning into some sort of campusy thing? Would that work, or is it?
Well, I think the Academy of Art already has like a couple of campuses scattered across town, right? So I don't know. If we were to go down this path, we would have to, would you offer them nicer space to attract more students? I don't know.
Yeah.
There has been classroom space in that building before. And not the best place to maybe do it, but there's place to eat lunch, I guess, in the food court. You know what I mean? You don't need to leave.
Built-in cafeteria.
There you go. Yeah.
All right. To get us close to taking us home, one of the questions here, which is roughly where we plan to end, is we know we're in a cycle. We're probably at rock bottom. Maybe there's a subfloor. We don't know yet. What happens now? How long until we see an upswing, a real upswing? We feel like we're back where we were. Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Is it 20 years? It's probably hard to pick a number, but what are discussions like around that topic?
Well, all eyes are on the election. So like deals you guys are seeing closed now have been baked like well before today. So it doesn't seem like anyone's making decisions right now. They're just anxiously watching to see what happens in November.
And when you say the election, it's not just presidential.
Yeah, the local election here. And
because
look, I think fairly or unfairly, there is a huge appetite for change in the city. And without commenting on any like candidate specifically, it's just that everyone's watching for that right now. Is like can this election finally stamp like a new era for San Francisco, even if the policies day to day don't change that much, as I think everyone here can attest to, right? It's hard to move like a giant ship, but they're watching the election. They're watching what the Federal Reserve will do, in September. So these are like indicators that can tell investors to like get off the sideline or stay on it even longer, right? So I think it's not a great answer. You kind of we have to wait and see for certain dominoes to fall. But look, we know that this area, this region, despite all the kind of hoopla about Miami or Austin, is still the center of tech innovation. There are huge outstanding questions about, where artificial intelligence, which is where all the money is going now, is going to take us. But again, you kind of look at all those three indicators. You have potential change politically, you have economic headwinds that might relax or go in a more favorable direction, and you have a high growth sector potentially that's still based here. And I think those are the three things that are still informing a lot of transactions right now, and why people still move here and love living here.
What's your take?
Well, I mean, on the political piece of it, I mean, that is a huge factor in helping to reset some. So much of the negative headlines that have come out around San Francisco has colored the perception of the city regionally, in the state, and really nationwide. And that has sort of led, if your headline around San Francisco is it's in trouble, things suck, there's like things aren't getting better. You're a guy who lives in Manhattan, who's like on this investment committee, who's like makes a decision whether to fund a construction project or not. That's the thing you have in your head. You're going to say no. So regardless of the commenting on the individual policies or anything, like the narrative in the national headlines has to start to change. And that is started in some respect with AI. That has kind of become a major storyline. But there needs to be sort of a reset in the narrative around San Francisco's people's perception around San Francisco, and that will color money coming in, and people having to make decisions on whether they want to be here. I think that would also attract more people to come here. I think I have this conversation a lot with people who live in the city and love the city. It's like sometimes you feel like you have to be on the defense around San Francisco, and I think like changing that a little bit would help do a lot, even if it doesn't actually change the numerical values or anything like that. So I think a lot of us are waiting for the next few months, and I think when interest rates start to move down, maybe not the first cut, but when things start to move, we'll start to see more activity and transactions in the next few quarters, and definitely in the next year, if the interest rates do continue to fall.
It kind of takes us back to where we started, which is this whole revival is really vibes based. And that, I think that illustration of a lender in another city is so powerful, because that is how decisions get made. Yes, it's this complex analysis and you have to look at all these variables, but ultimately releasing the cash is a human decision, and it is vibes based. So maybe that disco ball on First Thursdays is going to save us all.
And that gives me hope, because and we forgot to mention like the raves that have been like really successful here, they've been throwing too, is that like young people still want to come here. And that was the sense I got from First Thursday. And you think about what worked for San Francisco in the last tech bull run. San Francisco is the face of this industry. The engineering happens in the peninsula, the assembly happens in the South Bay. Is kind of more or less how Silicon Valley is structured, but like San Francisco is still the face. People still want to come up here. It's still the best. And I'm one of those. I don't live in San Francisco, full disclosure. Like I come up here 4 days a week because of my boss's return to office policy. I find myself defending it all the time. There's a lot of misconceptions about public safety and how bad things are down here. Things are bad, but it's still great.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you to both of you for sharing all that information. Thanks everyone for joining. If you don't already know, we're at SF Standard on all social channels. We've gotten some good story tips just in this conversation. So please reach out to both Kevin and Kevin.
Send us an email. If there's anything you want us to look into or the questions that you have, we'd love to investigate and answer for you.
Thank you and have a lovely day.